Welcome, everybody. Good to be here on the podcast today. Today, Michael will be trying not to touch his face today. He received feedback that he was touching his face too much.
I got some, let's say, constructive criticism from my wife that I was too fidgety. Stop it. That I was too fidgety. I was touching my face too much last episode. So I'm fidgeting with something in my hands today.
This week's feedback will be, don't let anybody else touch your face either.
Yeah. Gosh, and you never win, can you? I'm just kidding.
Not around here, you can't.
No.
Good to see you guys. Had a good weekend this weekend.
It was great.
Very good weekend. Did you have a good time?
I had a good time.
Good.
I did. I love talking about generosity.
Yep.
It's so much fun. We talked about that in case you weren't there. Talked about one of our values, which is radical generosity, and something we've been moving into more and more over the last 4 years, really heavily,
Right.
And I can honestly say that radical generosity value has produced so much fun for us in ministry, so much fun, so many stories. I mean, I could just spend the podcast telling stories of how that's affected people. But this week was just an invitation for our church family to join that party,
Right.
to join that party, to be radically generous with the Lord, with His kingdom, with our community. And so I've heard this type of thing. We talked about giving, and I've heard it done before when it was kind of like, and I may have done it at some point, when it was kind of like heavy-handed, like you ought to give, you ought to do this, you ought, and it really seemed legalistic and really like a lecture. I wanted this weekend and the next, we're going to do another sermon on it, and the next time we do it, to be an invitation to something joyous, because it really is.
Right.
Instead of just a legalistic responsibility. I do believe it's a responsibility and a step of obedience, but I wanted to come at it more from invite you to a great celebration, because that's how the story ends. Well, it doesn't completely end, but within this parable of the talents, it went to a celebration.
And you may have just answered the question. One of the questions that I have is that, I've talked to a lot of pastors, and sometimes this can be a tough topic for them to be able to feel comfortable tackling when you start talking to people about money and giving and experiencing generosity. How have you navigated that tension there about, I know we should talk about money, but also sometimes it's a little bit uncomfortable to talk about as well.
I see it as if we don't, as pastors, if we don't challenge the people in giving, we're really missing an opportunity for them to walk in blessing. I had to make that switch myself, because early on you hear, when you're young in ministry, people will tell you don't talk about money. It offends people. Just trust people to give and just don't say anything. And you're really tempted just to be quiet about it.
Right.
But what I realized is that the blessing that's out there for people when they are generous is so powerful that I don't want them to miss that. So as their pastor, I want to invite them into this place of incredible blessing by walking in generosity. The other thing over the years that I've discovered that has helped me navigate it is that really people don't get mad about it. When I preach something like this, I say it every time, and it always is true. I'll have 5, 6, 10 stories of people coming up to tell me their giving story and how they were so blessed to give, how God blessed them in return. So if there's pastors listening out there, I would say preach on giving with a heart of love and making an invitation, and don't fear.
Yeah.
Anybody that gets mad, I said this in one of the services, I felt like it might have been a little too hard, but I said, if this one makes you mad, it probably should. If it stirs you up, it probably should, because you need to be shaken a little bit out of complacency and start to be generous. But you start talking about people's money, that's very personal, and it's very visceral almost. It's very it's really real.
Yeah, seems to be kind of two pitfalls when you're talking about this, where you can go one side, you don't want to err on the side of legalism, where you say you have to give X amount to us, and you don't want to err too much on that, because then it just kind of feels like you might be pandering to the audience just to try to get them to give to your church. But on the other side of that, which I thought we did a good job of avoiding as well, is like you also don't want to err too much on the side of give so that God can bless you and that you can be rich, which I thought I thought you did a good job of explaining that, of like this isn't like prosperity stuff. Like this isn't about you giving so that you can receive, and this isn't about God wants to make everybody in the room super wealthy necessarily. It's an invitation, like you said, to a celebration of giving and to a spirit of. You talked about like not owning the money at all. Even everything is owned by God, so it's not about you getting rich either by giving.
The truth is that there are Christian ministries, and I use the term loosely, I really do, ministries out there who do manipulate people into giving to them with promise of this great return to you, you know. And if I don't see that much anymore, I don't really watch TV like that anymore, but it was for you many years when I was growing up, you'd have these preachers on there saying, sow a seed into my ministry and this is going to happen in your life. I think there is a prosperity gospel out there that the whole point is just us getting rich. Mm-hmm. And the whole point of Christianity is for the kingdom of God to be made manifest, for Jesus to be glorified, for people to come to know him. That's the main point of it. It's not just about us getting rich. There's also the poverty gospel that says there's blessing and godliness in being poor, and I don't want either one of those.
Sure.
I believe in the kingdom. We're called to lift up Jesus, and as we're generous to his kingdom and to our world, that he blesses us and always gives us enough.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think, if you read about it in the scripture, that storing up riches is almost always, if not always, portrayed as a bad thing.
Yep.
You know, lay up treasure in heaven, not on earth, because it'll be corrupted on earth. You have the parable of the rich fool, you know, who built bigger barns and was storing up while other people were hungry.
Yep.
It feels to me like the gospel of the kingdom is that illustration in the Old Testament that I used of the lady pouring out a bottle of oil, and as long as she poured out, there was always enough.
Yep.
Even the manna in the wilderness, you know, with Moses and the children of Israel, they could only store it up for one day, and that was for the Sabbath day. Mm-hmm. But if they tried to store it up Monday through Friday, Saturday, it would rot. You know,
it's just reliance. It feels like, because even like the old lady pouring out the oil, her bottle was small, and so she had a good excuse to be like, "Oh, if I had a bigger bottle of oil, I could pour more of this out." But I think God was teaching her, regardless of the size of your oil bottle, or in this case, what we're talking about, your budget, regardless of the size of that, if you trust me, I'll always give you enough to where you have some and you pour it out as well.
Yep.
This lady, if you think about it, what she did in that house, she took a little bottle of oil. If you don't know the story, they were desperately starving, you know, and the prophet came in and said, go gather up a bunch of bottles and pots and pans and fill the house up with them. She's got a little jar of oil. Mm-hmm. And as long as she poured it out, it kept pouring. Mm-hmm. So it's like she's got a pint bottle, let's say, and she's filling up a gallon jar. That doesn't make sense. The laws of science and physics, it just doesn't make sense. Mm-hmm. But that's what God does. He gives us enough that we can continually pour it out, and it's always there. Yeah. So I say to people all the time, just give. Just give. Mm-hmm. Give to the Lord's work. Give to people. Generous people always have enough. They do.
Yeah. One of the things I loved, and I think you said it in all of them, I can't remember, but, you know, oftentimes it feels like, you know, that there is this, you know, one of the reasons that you may want to talk about finances, or you've heard about don't talk about finances in the church, is because the church is just always about needing somebody's money or wanting somebody's money kind of deal. And you really came at it from this vantage point of, hey, you know, this is more about you as a disciple of Christ, and getting a chance to experience all that God has for you, more so than the fact that the church needs you. The church is doing well. The church is doing extremely well, and everything's moving in the right direction. And we do have some big dreams about where we feel like God's taking us, and it's gonna take all of us giving together. But it's not just about that. It is really about this discipleship moment here for all of us to be able to step into a lifestyle of generosity, and being more than just, as long as I give this, I'm okay. But it's really about, you know, stepping into all that God has for us. Absolutely.
Yeah, it's not just about something we want to do that we need money for. Now, even that, when you talk about the big dreams have got to be about people too.
That's
it can't be about an organization.
Yep.
It's not about build upward into some mega something that we can all stand back and admire. Mm-hmm. It's like, hey, we need some big dreams that we got coming, you know, we'll be talking about in October. Yeah, we need giving to go up to make all that happen.
Right.
Because things are ridiculously expensive today. Every estimate we get back on everything, we're like, wow.
Didn't see that coming.
So obviously we need people to give. We need giving go up for us to dream bigger. But the dreams are not self-centered. The dreams are not building something for us. The dreams are to keep touching our community and seeing our community transformed by Jesus. We need spaces large enough to hold all the people that are coming.
Right.
We need rooms to do ministry. We need
Mm-hmm.
parking lots for people to park on. We need all kinds of stuff like that. Staff to oversee some of it, to lead volunteers.
Oh,
I mean,
yeah.
there's just big vision, but it's all about pouring out into the community, and I want people to see that.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But it is more than just, hey, give this amount and you're okay. It's about developing a lifestyle of generosity, getting free from the scarcity mindset. I've seen that so much in my life.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I've seen so many people, specifically people who came through the Depression, you know,
Right.
and you cannot fault them for this. And I'm not saying they're some of the greatest people in American history who endured that and came through it, but so many of them were just traumatized so deeply by not having that there's almost a fear of not having enough.
Sure.
And a compulsive nature of holding on to everything I've got, you know.
Yep.
And it's like the people can't throw away anything, you know. They just can't discard anything. They got to hang on to everything. I'm not saying that's all wrong, and I'm not saying we need to be wasteful either.
Sure.
You know, I'm not saying, we joked about using a little sliver of soap, and several people like to do that, and it's fine. I mean, I'm not saying that's a sin to do. I'm just saying, don't let that turn into a bondage, and generosity will cure that.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
You may obviously we spend a lot of time talking about this parable within Scripture that Jesus talked
Yeah.
about, where the master gave the managers there different portions that they were responsible for, and kind of walked their way through it, and kind of got to the last one is kind of where we spent some time and some energy talking about how he bought into a couple of lies there about the master. Using this verse there, we saw him as a harsh man. And we really talked about, hey, one of the lies that we believe when we're kind of working our way through whether or not we're going to be generous people or not, and breaking that scarcity mindset, was that God can't be trusted. And the second lie was that I won't have enough. And man, how it's so real. And I think about just the time period that we live in right now, kind of where the reality of where the economy is, and so many people struggling. And you mentioned about how expensive things are. Man, it is so easy for that mindset of I'm not going to have enough to creep in, almost on a daily on a daily battle for so many of us. But you flipped it around and talked about a truth that we needed to believe, and that is the fact that we can buy into, and we can know that with God, I'm always going to have enough. I'm never going to be without. Can you talk about how freeing that has been for you and your family when you were able to break the scarcity mindset for you?
Well, I would say we're continuing to break it. I wouldn't say we just had this wonderful breakthrough and we're just never struggle with that again, because
Yep.
I still can get drawn into worry about not having enough, planning for the fourth quarter of my life,
Right.
and trying to be ready for that, which is still a ways off, but
Right.
I'm just past the halftime show right now.
Okay, all right.
So I got a ways to go. But when you're thinking of that, fear can creep in. The servant said two things: "You're a harsh man, and I was afraid I'd lose your money."
Mm-hmm.
You're a harsh man. I was afraid I'd lose your money. So you got this misconception of the master's heart, and then you got this fear of loss,
Mm-hmm.
and that leads to those two ideas. God, you can't really trust God. He's not going to be there for you, and you're going to lose, and you're not going to have enough, And it's been very liberating for us to start to see over many years, actually, how you can trust God. I talked about the early days of ministry, when we didn't have enough.
Right.
That was so tough, and a lot of young couples are there.
Mm-hmm.
And quite frankly, a lot of us need to go through that season in our life. It teaches you things that you can't learn any other way. People who've always had plenty miss out on some lessons. So it was good for us for a few years there just to feel how tight life can be. But it taught us to give through it and to be generous through it. And that has just increased over the years. And I've just seen the faithfulness of God. We were married 30 years this year, and I've seen the faithfulness of God across 30 years of giving. And I've seen His word proven true time and time again, that every need we've had has been supplied. Every time we worried about something, God came through.
It's really good.
Yeah, He always does.
Yeah, and I think there's definitely a line of like, don't be financially irresponsible.
Certainly.
And I think God calls us to be good stewards of everything. He talks about being good stewards of our bodies, and certainly with all of our possessions as well. We're supposed to be good stewards of those.
100%.
And when you say stewards, some people don't know what that means. It's like
a manager.
Yeah, you're a manager of it, but it's
Mhm.
important because you also don't own it. you're a steward of
Exactly
it.
right.
You're not an owner. You're a person who's in charge of distributing it. So storing it up doesn't really make any sense in that sense. Now, I'm not saying, and you said this, like save up for your retirement,
Certainly.
have a savings account. All of us do. We all have emergency funds, and ideally, we're saving a bunch of money. But we're not saving that money out of fear of not having enough, or we're just trying to be financially responsible. And as long as you have generosity built into your budgeting, then that other stuff's great.
You know, I like Dave Ramsey.
Yeah,
I know
definitely.
he can be controversial, but I like Dave Ramsey a lot, and I
Mm-hmm.
like his conception of save 3 to 6 months of living expenses and have that in case something happens to alter your income or a sickness or something like that. Just have 3 to 6 months in the bank, and that's a sound principle. Then he says invest a good percentage of your income into retirement, and that's a good principle. I don't think there's a thing in the world wrong with that. I think every couple that just struggles with money, they ought to sit down and do a budget, or a single person couple, whoever it is, sit down and do a budget, actually track what you get in and track what you spend and do that. And within that budget, put generosity there.
Yep.
It's my belief 10% off the top goes to God. That's what I practice. That's what I do. People debate that all the time. And I don't get overly legalistic. We're not checking people's pay stubs or anything crazy like that. We're just we're challenging people and inviting people to that, you know, and it's my belief that that works. So that's a budget for us. On top of that is just a blessed budget. This is just money we spend just to bless people and love people.
Yeah.
One of the greatest ideas we've had over the years is just to keep some blessed cash in the wallet or in the purse all the time. Figure out what your amount is a month. It may be a $10 bill, $20 bill, $50 or $100 bill. Put one of those in your wallet every month and just bless somebody with it that you run into.
Yeah.
It's part of being prepared and ready. It's part of being instant in season and out of season is to be ready to bless when the time comes. And it's just wonderful to be able to do that.
Yeah,
it really is. When you're in a grocery store and you see this mom who can't pay a bill, I've just made a determination. If I'm in a grocery store and I see somebody having to put something back, I'm paying for that.
Yeah.
Because I mentioned that yesterday. I had that wound of being a young married couple and we didn't have enough money and had to put something back. And I felt so humiliated. If I see that, I'm paying for it.
Yeah. Yeah. Those are great starting points too. Because some people who even want to be generous might have no idea where to start. Great places to start. Put a generosity portion in your budget. If you're not doing budgeting, you should budget. Definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Maybe that's the place to start.
Yeah, definitely budget. Get an app. There's so
we
many
got
apps.
a free resource on our website.
We do. We do. You can get Dave Ramsey's Every Dollar for free.
Ramsey
with
Plus,
us.
the whole suite, the Ramsey Plus, we give it away free all the time as part of Radical Generosity.
You can go to our
get
website
that.
and you can get it right directly from
There's a code on the website. Where is it in the
Yeah,
website?
it should be. Just go to ucf.cc. There should be a page that has a free resource button.
Yep.
And there's a link there. If not, we also have the link on all of our live streams on YouTube.
Yep.
So
So you can get on there and start budgeting.
You can look on there. Yeah, and that's it. I mean, I use that personally.
I do too.
So yeah, so
I do too.
Yeah, so all three. I mean, the Every Dollar app for us has been really radical in changing our budget. It tracks your expenses and you can put it in categories. And
I know this conversation was about generosity too, but I mean, budgeting fits into that.
oh yeah,
Really
and
does.
I just give you a quick testimony from us this year. And we've been doing Dave Ramsey's plus here for a while now. Man, we just were able to pay off our vehicle early
There we go.
this past month, and so that eliminated all of our debt except for the house at this point in time. And so, man, just I'll tell you what, there's some extra opportunities to be a little generous when you don't feel the weight of debt weight hanging over your head.
If you don't, yeah.
Head as well. So
If you don't know what your budget is, it's hard to be generous because you have no idea what you have.
Yeah.
I'll give you a
know.
big thing right now. I'll give this to people. One of the biggest things it did for Alexa and I in our marriage was that she has the app on her phone and I have it on my phone, so we can both look at it in real time.
Yep.
You open it up every day and you see your latest transactions. You give them all a name. You pop them in your budget. Alexa and I don't argue over what we spend individually because we have a budget amount. We call it our allowance.
Yeah.
And I have an allowance and she has an allowance. And if she doesn't come to me ever and say, "Can I buy this?" It's just if she's got it in her allowance, she does.
Just go
And the
get it.
same with me.
Yeah.
You just get it if it's in your allowance. So if you can do that, set aside whatever it is,
Yeah.
$25 a month if you want to do that, or less or more, just set that aside, because we just don't have those arguments anymore because it's in the budget.
Yep.
And
That's
we
awesome.
both look at the budget.
Yeah.
It's not
Yeah.
like I'm off in a secret room somewhere cranking out the budget and then come out and
Yeah.
tell her what it is.
That's great.
So it's pretty cool.
Mhm.
Awesome.
Been good to be with y'all. Thanks.
too, sir.
We'll
Yep.
continue again next time with another giving message. It'll be fun, and
Yeah.
I got that coming up soon. And
Got a couple more in between that.
yeah,
but,
so it's going to be a good
Yeah.
few weeks,
Mhm.
and then we spend October. We'll be into our 100th anniversary as a church, which will be fun.
Hard to believe.
It really is.
yeah, and
Yep.
we've been here for every year of it.
No, I've been here for 27.
100 years old.
You know what's cool? Did we say this on the podcast? My predecessor was named Homer Jenkins, precious guy. His wife Donna and his children are still here in the church. They were here 23 years. We've been here 27 years. So between Homer and the Jenkins family and the Craver family, we've actually led this church for half of its life,
that's
which
pretty
is
cool.
really cool that lands right on the 100th anniversary.
Definitely.
That's really powerful.
Awesome.
Great.
All right. See y'all next time.
See
Thanks.
you around. Thank you.
Bye-bye.